We have the pleasure of having not one, but two people from Bridge today. Listen to that. Yes. Our first presenter is Bert Hartman, and Bert is the Bridge Program Managing Engineer. So Bert, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Like was introduced, Bert Hartman, Bridge Program Managing Engineer. It's always good to start a presentation on bridges with a nice picture of a bridge. This is the Astoria-Megler Bridge. It's over the mouth of the Columbia River. Bridge is over 4 miles long. There are over 9,000 tons of steel. That's more steel than all of other coastal bridges combined. Since this is a border bridge, we share the cost with Washington. Together we spend an average of $5 million per year to maintain this bridge. This bridge either has an active project or the next project's in development. The bridge program has specific guidance on how bridge funds can be used, which is detailed in DES 01, the use of fix-it program funds. Funds can be used for bridge rehabilitation, replacement of high-value or high-risk bridges, and to increase the seismic resilience on identified lifelines routes. The System Preservation Strategy Work Plan for Bridge has several strategies. The first strategy is to protect high-value coastal, historic, and border structures. This takes approximately 30% of the funding that's available for the STIP. Priority is also given to high-priority freight corridors, which are called fix-it routes. We also allocate $10 million per year of the STIP to the Major Bridge Maintenance Program, which is primarily used to address structural issues in paving. Bridge is a centralized program. There are both positive and negative aspects to having a centralized program. There can be coordination issues regarding project delivery. For example, in the June OTC meeting, there was a major rebalance of the STIP with the intent that future changes in projects that are considered by the OTC would be minimized. Within 1 week, I was asked to provide $1.3 million in bridge funding to a project. I went to the STIP rebalance document and found the project was included, and over $18 million was added. However, bridge funding was not part of the funding that was added. Each year, Bridge publishes a Bridge Condition Report. This is an excellent reference that's available for you to understand bridges and the bridge program. The chart below is from the 2018 Bridge Condition Report. The chart shows we're doing well with reducing the number of bridges that are in poor condition. However, it's important to note that much of the work that keeps the number of poor bridges low is done through the Major Bridge Maintenance Program. The scope of these projects is typically isolated to a small portion of the bridge that's controlling the condition rating, like a timber pile that's rotted. This does not improve the general condition of the bridge. The most concerning trend is the number of bridges in good condition is steadily declining. The way to get a bridge in good condition is to buy a new one. The population that we are most concerned with is those bridges that are in fair condition, just one step away from being in poor condition. As the population continues to age, at some point they'll begin to spill over into being in poor condition at a rate that will exceed our ability to manage them. The numbers to the right show the sustainable replacement rate is 27 bridges per year. The math is straightforward. We have approximately 2,700 bridges. If each bridge were to last 100 years, a sustainable replacement rate would be 27 bridges per year. The 100-year lifespan may be fine for modern bridges, but probably a bit optimistic for bridges built in the 1950s and 60s during the interstate era. Using a sustainable replacement rate of 27 bridges per year, we should be replacing 81 bridges during the 21-24 STIP. We're only replacing 5. While some changes to the STIP can be approved at the program level, others need to be approved by the OTC. The threshold for changes is greater than $500,000 or 25%, whichever is less. If the correct choice is to go to the OTC, I'd rather do that than to make a poor decision that's based on not wanting to admit there are issues with the delivery of a project. It's also important to know the OTC meets once a month. There's an extensive process to prepare materials for the OTC meeting, and this process can take several weeks. If you have a change that meets the criteria for OTC approval, it's important to coordinate early. Please do not request changes to projects that intentionally avoid the need to go to the OTC. In July, I was asked to sign a change management request for $499,999. I let the project team know I could not sign the CMR. In the June 2019 STIP rebalance, there were some projects that received a significant amount of funding. The source of this additional funding was the construction phase of some projects were delayed to the next STIP, or the project was canceled. The picture on the right is a bridge replacement project that was canceled. The bridge is on a national highway system. You can see that maintenance crews have pretty much given up on concrete patches and have started to use asphalt. What you don't see is the decay in the timber substructure and the many timber elements that have been replaced by maintenance over the years. So, there was a cost to add fund to projects. We'll probably deal with this bridge in the short term using the Major Bridge Maintenance Program. The project that you have could have excess funding. Depending on what region you're in, there could be quite a bit of excess funding. In dealing with transportation project managers, I've heard the logic that the project has some money, let's add scope to the project. Also, if the project has money, there's a temptation for those involved in the project development to use that EA freely. Please be aware of these tendencies. If a project needs more funds for PE, the first thing I do is go to Power BI and see how the funds have been used. For example, when roadway costs exceed bridge costs for a 2-lane bridge replacement on a straight portion of highway, I will be asking questions. Returning funds to the program gives Bridge the ability to fund CMRs and potentially add a project to the STIP we otherwise could not fund. While some projects in the STIP are for specific bridges, there are other projects that may have bridges within the project limits. From a bridge perspective, these projects come in 4 flavors. If you're involved in project delivery long enough, you may be able to try all 4. The first flavor is when a bridge is fully included in the project. What I mean is fully included is that the field scoping team included the bridges in the scoping effort, and there was coordination with Bridge regarding the funding from Bridge to address bridge needs. The second flavor is very similar, but the need to include bridges was not recognized until after the field scoping was done. This can happen as 100% lists are developed. Estimates are included for bridge work based on the estimates for similar projects that were field scoped. So you will start out with a project that has bridges included that may or may not have additional funding. Some projects are scoped, programmed, and active before there's a realization there are bridges within the project limits. The picture at the right was taken on I-84. The project was to replace 5.5 miles of rutted pavement. There were 4 bridges within the project limits with worn concrete driving surfaces. We do have funding that's reserved to add to paving projects if needed, but we would rather account for that as 100% lists are being developed. The final category is when bridges are intentionally left out of paving projects. This can happen during paving projects that are done by the districts. The districts want to pave as many lane miles as possible, and bridges can be expensive due to the need for waterproof membranes and issues with ADA. One approach is to ask for major bridge maintenance funding the year before the paving project. The need to pave the bridges is legitimate, but the cost to pave one bridge at a time is high. We're aware that districts sometimes do this to stretch their funding, but we'll be more careful in the future when Major Bridge Maintenance Program is asked to provide money for paving. We also get requests to pave bridges, but notice the pavement is new on each side of the bridge. If you have a district paving project, please include the bridges. We have agreements in place for what the project will pay for and what bridge will pay for. It's much more efficient to include bridges that are within the limits of paving projects. There can be complications when bridges are included in paving projects. I've already mentioned membranes and ADA. Substandard bridge rails can also be an issue. There's a program that's funded at $1.5 million per year to address substandard bridge rails, so that not all bridge rails that are within projects need to be upgraded. Design exceptions should be used to document why a substandard bridge rail was not addressed. ADA has added a level of complication. Sometimes a basic and cost-effective rail retrofit will not be possible to a sidewalk width that's marginal. This complicates project delivery. We're working on this issue, but I want to be sure you're aware of it since it's a work in progress. There was a recent project where the transportation project manager and the area manager called me to discuss how they were going to address the bridge rail issue. Their conclusion was the best choice was to replace the bridge. The bridge is in satisfactory condition and has adequate load capacity. I wish all of our bridges were as good as this one. In the end, the solution was to seek a design exception. The local agency bridge program differs from the state bridge program. There's a committee called the Local Agency Bridge Selection Committee that meets to select projects. The funding is divided between big bridges and small bridges. The big bridge owners work it out amongst themselves on how to split the funding. The small bridge funding is divided between bridges that are on the federal aid system and those that are not. The state bridge engineer can approve changes up to 20% of the total bridge cost, not to exceed $200,000. The requests that the local agency bridge selection committee considers are typically handled through email, and we'll get an answer within 2 weeks. With the passage of House Bill 2017, state funding was made available for the delivery of local projects, including local bridge projects. The projects can be a state-funded local project, or the project can be delivered by a certified agency. You may hear that ODOT is throwing money over the fence when it comes to local projects. While there may be a hands-off approach to project delivery, there are requirements since a bridge will be included in the National Bridge Inventory. The bridge must be built to AASHTO standards, and we need to have required reports such as constructed drawings, foundation reports, pile records, and a load rating. The picture to the right is of a local agency bridge that failed due to the foundation being compromised during a high-flow event. This is called scour. The bridge is on a county road, but is not maintained by the county. The bridge is actually an old railroad flat car that was wrecked and mangled, so the railroad no longer wanted to use it. The railroad sold it so it could be used as a bridge. The picture on the right is a mainline I-84 bridge that the deck has failed. This deck was built in the 1950s, and the deck is thin compared to modern designs. Full-depth failures of bridge decks are not isolated in 1950s bridges. We had a full-depth deck failure on the Fremont Bridge, which was built in 1973. This slide lists times when there's interaction between bridge and the regions. Bridge provides the initial business case that is used for field scoping. There's interaction as a project is scoped and the 100% list is finalized. The final business case is completed by the project sponsor, which can vary from one region to another. For the current STIP, you might or might not have a final business case. We do not have a final business case for all projects in the 21-24 STIP at this time. Bridge will review and sign the charter and all CMRs, including CMR 0, which sets the baseline for the performance measure regarding on-time and on-budget delivery. Each change will require interaction. It's desired to keep scope changes to a minimum, but if the project team believes that changing scope is the right thing to do, please coordinate with me. It's important that whenever you communicate with Bridge regarding a project, use the key number. The contract number and project name are meaningless when I'm trying to determine what project you're referring to. If the project needs to slip, early coordination is critical. I have a good working relationship with the program and funding services and want to maintain that relationship. They need to make sure that ODOT is able to obligate all our federal funds each year, so the sooner we can coordinate on projects that need to slip, the better. If the bridge is over a railroad, there will need to be coordination. Please be aware there can be a long process with extended periods of silence from the railroad. Coordination with the Coast Guard when a bridge is over water can also be time-consuming and affect project schedule. If the project requires an agreement, such as a border bridge, there can be many months required to have an agreement in place. If the project will add dead load to a bridge, such as a deck overlay, or when there will be containment needed during construction, such as a paint project, then the load rating will need to be updated. The load raters are busy with meeting federal requirements for load rating and may or may not be able to update a load rating on short notice. This can also affect project delivery. If your project needs more funding, please coordinate as early as possible so adjustments can be made to other projects if that is needed. The OTC is frustrated when they're approached very late in the project and there's not really a decision to be made except adding funding. Finally, there's a possibility you will inherit a project that was started by someone else. If this is the case, there may be a very good reason why you inherited that project. It might have substantial issues. There was one recent bridge replacement project that went through the entire project development process and was bid. It was not until a contractor was on site that someone realized there was no consideration for how traffic would be handled during the bridge replacement. This was on a state highway. We ended up having to pay for paving a county road that could be used as a detour, but that was expensive since it was short notice and it was paid for by a change order. You will not be getting that project, but you might get a similar project. If you do inherit a project going sideways and involves a bridge, please let me know as soon as you can. I will show compassion. This is a picture from the 1936 Rose Festival. The St. John's Bridge was completed in 1931. The ship is the USS Portland, commissioned in 1933. So we have two assets in this picture. The St. John's Bridge had a major project in 2003. We'll have another project in the 21-24 STIP. The USS Portland was scrapped in 1962. Hopefully this will help you remember that bridges have a lifespan that's much longer than other assets and require a substantial level of funding to maintain. Scott Liesinger will continue with the bridge portion of this training.
Advance the slide there. Introduce Scott Liesinger, and he is the Bridge Design Managing Engineer. And what I like about Scott, well, many things, but he lets me put graphics in his PowerPoint. So thank you, Scott.
Darn right.
Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Bert. So I'll continue this presentation from the aspect of bridge design. And as I speak to the required touch points that we're asked to touch on, I'll probably recap a few things that Bert has already said. I need to start, though. Diana said, start by introducing the new state bridge engineer. So as of the first of the month, Ray Mabey has assumed the position of the state bridge engineer, and he is on board with us at the TLC in Salem. So the first touch point that we were asked to give information on here was the roles and responsibilities in bridge. And bridge section is actually made up of 4 units that have different charges. And we also have really 7 subunits inside the whole section. Bridge program, as Bert just touched on, is comprised of 3 of those groups. The program itself, he mentioned the bridge maintenance portion of that. And then also the load rating subunit is inside his unit. Bridge operations and standards is comprised of 2 subunits, the standards portion, and then operations or inspection. And in this case, inspection, we have our regional bridge inspectors out, one hopefully 2, we'd like 2, but not always have 2 in each region. And they are inspecting bridges not for construction purposes, but just for regular condition inspection on a regular cycle, usually every 2 years. And then we have the bridge preservation design unit, and then the regional bridge design unit, or bridge design unit, you'll hear me call it that also. Bridge operations and standards unit is managed by Craig Scheich, and his roles when it comes to project delivery is to maintain those bridge standards that we follow. and then to review design deviations and exceptions and make a recommendation to the state bridge engineer for approval or rejection. The Bridge Preservation Design Unit is managed by Ray Bottenberg, and then I have the Bridge Design Unit as noted here. One role and responsibility of the Bridge Preservation Design Unit is to produce PS&E documents for STIP projects with specialty bridge preservation work. So this work might include cathodic protection or paint, mechanical, so for example, our moving bridges, the lift spans of the interstate bridge is an example of that. Electrical upgrades to those movable bridges, and also covered bridges are covered in his unit. My unit is similar to Ray's, except I don't have the specialty folks per se. My unit still produces PS&E documents for general bridge design work, including new and replacement bridges, new replacement culverts. And then depending upon which region you're in and how your service agreement reads, for bridge design, my unit may do retaining walls, sound walls, poles, and some of those overhead sign supports that Sam was showing us here just a little while ago. From a project delivery standpoint, the Bridge Preservation Design Unit and the Regional Bridge Design Unit have similar information that we need from TPMs. And there's similar information that we also give to the TPMs. So from the TPMs, we need a resource request at the start of the advanced investigations or near the start of project initiation. At the start of project initiation, we would need a project scope and at least a high-level description of what you want to accomplish in the bridge arena for your project. Now that might sound a little bit weird because it's kind of like, Scott, you should already know what you're doing for bridge work. But not all of the projects, you'll hear this a little bit here in a little bit, is that I don't work just solely on the bridge program projects. So there are projects out there, as Bert's alluding to here, pavement type projects, culvert projects, where I don't exactly know the scope from the start. So sometimes information does need to still flow my way as to what you're really wanting the bridge design unit to do for you. We need a project schedule at the project initiation. It may change, that's okay. We need a starting point for what we're going to be producing and delivering. And then I'd ask, the project management portion, the quality review management piece from you throughout the remaining project delivery phases. So at every one of those milestones, project goes through a review process that you're basically leading. To the TPMs, we will give one or more resources, which can be in-house or outsourced. And then, of course, our deliverables that will be defined here in upcoming slides. I wanted to also note that these are just the gives and gets. I call them gives and gets, what we exchange here to the TPM. There's a lot of interaction that goes on between disciplines. For example, between bridge and roadway or bridge and geotech. And if these interactions aren't going as well as we'd like them to be going, then I'll usually ask designers to notify you so you're not surprised if our deliverables end up coming in a little bit on the late side or there's issues there. Let's see, gives and gets for the RECP. So I forget who said it earlier. I'm probably going to, every once in a while, slip and use CPM. Bear with me. For the RECP, a little bit different than from the TPMs. What we need from the RECP is, again, a resource request at the start of work. Information to help prepare the statement of work if you're asking for that. And we'll also do independent cost estimates if you ask for that to be done. If not, then we would like to at least get an executed signed contract so that we know what has been included in that contract. Again, we need a project schedule at a project initiation, and then A&E deliverables as they come in, the bridge portions of those sent to us so that we can do our review. To the RECP, we will give one or more resources, contract development information, and review comments on those deliverables that you send to us. So let's see, the next touch point in the presentation is, when does Bridge engage any project, and do we need to engage in all projects? So the Bridge Preservation Design Unit does not engage in all projects. They generally only engage in projects with the work type equals bridge. They engage in projects with special bridge preservation type work. I mentioned this earlier, but cathodic protection, mechanical, electrical, paint, covered bridges. And we like to engage as early as possible, no later than project kickoff, if we can. And sometimes they'll actually get started early if there's an early EA associated with the work. My unit, Regional Bridge Design Unit, we don't necessarily engage in all projects. We do engage in projects of all work types, not just bridge. So any project with a structural design aspect to it, we should be involved in, and again, retaining walls, sound walls, overhead sign supports. Kind of anything with reinforced concrete, structural steel, and timber associated with bridges or culverts. And again, engage as early as possible, hopefully no later than the project kickoff. So the next touch point we were asked to talk about was, does this bridge discipline have a program? And yes, as Bert has already indicated, we do have a program, and Bert is the manager of that. This next one, what information do TPMs need from Bridge to effectively and efficiently lead a project in PDT? You've heard Bert mention this. I'm going to mention it again. From the Bridge program standpoint, TPM needs a good understanding of the ODOT policy DES-01, use of fix-it program funds, knowledge of the system preservation strategy work plan for Bridge. That was done in 2011. Bert mentioned that, and talked a little bit about the things that are in that. And then a well-defined business case. From Bridge Preservation Design and the Regional Bridge Design Unit standpoint, the TPM needs scoping input at project scoping, scope verification, refinement at project initiation, and when we re-centralized the Bridge group on a statewide basis, we created a document that's internal to us for our resource assigning, which is called the Bridge Design Work Order, and it's good to have that put together at that time too. TPM needs an early exchange of bridge designs and other disciplines' preliminary design information. So engineering and design is an iterative process. It's not just somebody does something and then gives it to somebody else. This whole, the team needs to be working together, and they need to start working early and exchange information early. That will be create probably the best success for the project. Something else that you need is to know who to contact. To know to contact the regional bridge lead engineer if you don't know who to contact. So if, I got something, looks like a structure, who do I contact? In Portland, Emily Clyburn is the lead up there. Salem, Matthew Stucker. Roseburg, Bob Grubbs. Bend is Zach Beget, and LeGrand is George Bornstead. Reach out to those folks, and they will help you get whatever you need from a bridge standpoint. Also, to know that many of the other programs besides the bridge program can touch or involve bridges. Bert was kind of alluding to this with those pavement projects. Sometimes a design deviation or exception may be needed to forego doing work on a bridge in one of these other programs. So you quite possibly may need the help of a bridge designer to write the deviation or the exception. So if you don't have them on the team, it's going to be a little bit hard. It'll be less painful to include a bridge designer at the beginning of the project than to exclude them and then to have to bring them in later. And we have to try to figure out kind of what's going on. It's just a situation that we probably could have avoided just by having them there at the beginning. So let's see. The next touch point is what are the major deliverables a TPM should expect from bridge design? We produce a whole bunch of different things. If requested early, we'll do what's called the POC memo. That name's, I think, going to go away. You'll see it in the PDII information as other structure TS&L. And this is actually really a work in progress, which hasn't been hammered out completely. It came up at the end of the PDI initiative, and we have a group that's working on the roles and responsibilities for this. It's basically everything but bridge. So those retaining walls, those sound walls, the sign supports all fit in this other category. We produce the TS&L report, and then with the inclusion of the POC memo, the TS&L report is really becoming a bridge-only report. And it will really be only included for usually bridge replacements, significant rehab work and such where we have alternatives. DAP package information is another deliverable. The TS&L report is not a bridge DAP report. The TS&L report and DAP report, two separate documents. TS&L report has its purpose to document the new bridge and bridge replacement alternative study analysis that we do and the resulting preferred alternative. And the DAP package requires specific information as noted on that DAP checklist that you have now, and we'll be glad to help you get that information. Last one noted here, preliminary advance and final plans packages. So after DAP, the typical milestones include these preliminary advance and final plans. There's been a tendency to not use the preliminary milestone, and for bridge replacement work or major type structures work, I'd highly recommend that you don't delete that out. It gives us a point in time where we can check in to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our work. And when we don't have it, we're just basically going from DAP straight to an advanced plan set. We target the advanced plan milestone to be completely done with design. And at that point, we go into a structure quality checking process between advanced and final. That's basically just due to the high level of risk that's usually associated with the structures work. The time to complete that, varies, of course. New bridges, replacement bridges and such, is going to require more time than a rehabilitation style project. So we can adjust that time when we're working up the schedule at the beginning of a project. Let's see, by final plans, we like to be done, completely done, no design, no drafting, no checking, it's all done. That's our target, doesn't always happen. If Kelly Martin is in the room, she knows that, but we strive for that. So if we are not receiving information in a timely manner, especially ahead of the advanced plan milestone, we get something after advanced plans, we're behind schedule. We're probably going to end up delaying something because we're hoping to be in that quality checking process at that time. These next two slides list other deliverables that typically go to others besides the TPM. I'm not going to go through these. I'll just let you look at them here for a minute or two, just to show that there are other things that we do besides the PS&E package that other people are interested in and also get. So the last touch point here, the presentation, is what are the fatal flaws where a delay can affect the project schedule? And I understand I have broken the most sacred law of PowerPoint slide production. I've got way too many words on this slide. But it is kind of a sensitive matter, and it's probably a short list. Probably the number one fatal flaw is, again, not including the bridge designer early when there are bridges or other highway-related structures within the limits of the project. If we're coming in late, we're behind schedule. To highlight some of these others without going into them too deeply here, receiving information from other disciplines late or after the point in time that we really need it. ignoring or neglecting bridges within the project limits, brings us in late. Requesting bridge design to design other non-bridge highway-related structures after DAP. When we get to sign supported advanced plans, it doesn't work well for us. Changing project scope, and again, after DAP. So basically, if we have a good, clear scope at project kickoff, we get our work done early, we have the best chance at meeting the timelines that we set at the beginning of our project. Karen back there is telling me I gotta get off here. Last slide. So during the upper management review, we were asked to show where bridge is at on the racetrack. So wherever you see a red BR on the inside of this is where bridge is involved on the racetrack. There's a lot of red BRs on there. And Bert, did I miss any of those? So we're involved in a vast majority of the things that happen during this cycle. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Right. So I've asked Bert to join Scott up at the podium there because I know that you have questions. So who has the first question? Okay, thank you, Molly.
So, Bert, can you tell us a little bit about how you prioritize which bridges go into the STIP for second, third?
Well, what we start out with, we do we have a database of all the bridge inspections that have happened. Every bridge gets inspected every 2 years. And we look at those, which ones are in good, fair, poor condition. We look at, we have a key performance measure of bridges not distressed, and that includes vertical clearance issues. There's all sorts of, so we start with that database to start with. And then we go through and look at the individual bridges. We do desk scoping and try to see which ones we can maybe address through major bridge maintenance program. And we do follow the DES 01. It's pretty prescriptive of our border bridges, our high-value bridges, making sure we address those needs first because we can't afford to make a mistake on one of those. And then, so that's how we initially filter it down. Then we do the field scoping with the regions and then get that list down all the way. But we start off with looking at all of our inventory and seeing what our needs are.
So apologies to Scott. Apparently you had 2 more slides to go. So would you like to pop those up there?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go backwards. Unless you want to cover Justin's presentation.
No,
So-
that was the 2, but yeah, let's see if we can make this thing go. Shift tab, you want to take me back? Nope.
Okay.
Here we go. That was it.
That was it? I
was
thought you
it.
had 2 more slides.
Yep.
No? Okay. All right. Questions? More questions? This is a big program. Thank you.
So since no one else wanted to ask any questions, so Bert, you showed a kind of a shocking number when you start running numbers with regards to, the 27 bridges per year, and that means 81 bridges per STIP, and this next STIP is we're planning to replace 5. That's a shockingly large gap, and I was wondering, as you're looking towards the future, 24, 27, 30, do you foresee that being similar, or what are your thoughts as far as are we going to see the same number, or do you think that's going to grow, or do you have any idea?
Well, it's not going to get better. When we did House Bill 2017, some of those estimates were done pretty quickly. For example, the seismic work on the Center Street Bridge, that was funded through the House bill at $60 million. We knew that was just a preliminary estimate, so we had a parallel effort to find what the real estimate was, but that $60 million went into the House bill. It's going to cost $100 million. So that $40 million comes from the bridge program. So that's $40 million off the top going to seismic funding for the Center Street Bridge. So if we have more House bill funding issues, I'm sure they'll take funds from bridge. So I don't see that getting much better. The House bill gave ODOT more transportation funding than we've had before, but the bridges are getting more expensive. And what's really critical is on these secondary roads, it still costs a lot of money to replace bridges, to put detour bridges in and all the everything that goes with it. It's very expensive. So we don't have the money to replace bridges at a sustainable rate. We'll do okay for the next few years, but eventually these 1950s and 1960s bridges, they were built pretty cheap. And by the time we realize we're behind the power curve, it's going to be too late. Even if you replace bridges at a good rate in the future, you'll be so far behind the power curve, you'll be too late.
Any other questions?